say fuck it, do whatever you want 24/7, there's no laws, normally it doesn't end out pretty well. It doesn't end up well at all.
Well, people could want that, right? They could want anarchy and chaos and death and destruction, right? So what's wrong with anarchy and chaos and death and destruction in your worldview?
Because humanity said no.
And so you're not because certain people say we don't like that, but other people say we do like that. So how can you say this is good and that's bad when both of them say it's good? Or
objectively what's happened: death rates, rape rates, crime rates, murders.
And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with rape and murder? What's wrong with rape and murder? Why is that wrong? Some people say it's great, other people say it's bad. So how do you know what's good or bad when the terms good and bad become meaningless because different people believe what good and bad are different things?
And racist and trans. I am trans, and I am very queer.
There's no other possible way that I can explain it if you're going to understand it.
The Christians that I met, they were not
because
they were wrathful people.
I understand why you were saying what you were saying.
Yeah,
right?
I
understand the argument and why you're doing it that way.
Something to say about that?
Plain and simple, you don't have to have, you can leave people alone without introduction of religion, and they will be able to come up with what should and shouldn't be done.
Only according to them, only their personal opinion.
Yes.
So it's not really, it's meaningless. Again, meaningless.
What do you think God's commandments are? There were his opinions on what should and shouldn't be done.
There's one law that everyone is bound to and obligated to follow. Not just arbitrary opinions floating around, tons of different opinions. There's one opinion that matters, that we all need to listen to. That's the difference. And that's where morality comes from. An objective morality where this is right, that is wrong. It is actually right, it is actually wrong, because we're referring not to tons of different opinions. We're always referring back to the one opinion that matters. And that's where you get morality.
All right, I can't get you to go along the path that I want, so why does his opinion ultimately matter more than anyone else's?
Because he's revealed that it does, and that he's going to punish us in the end when we rebel against his standard. When we don't do what he says, there will be judgment.
All right, so you're gonna walk over to that building and lick it, or I'm gonna punch you in the face.
I'll punch you in the face first.
See, it doesn't work like that.
Well, it works.
Not a good way to.
That's God will punish people for
using fear to control a group of people, which has happened throughout history for a very long time.
Well, what's wrong with using fear? In your worldview, why is that wrong? Why is fear bad in your worldview?
Do you know history? Do you know history at all? World history.
Yeah, I know world history.
Yeah, they're sinners.
Name any point in time a government, an entity, anything has used fear to control the people, and tell me how well it worked out.
But again, how do you know what working out well is? I mean, why should it work out well? Why should civilizations thrive?
What I'm saying is he goes, you will do exactly what I say, or you're gonna burn in hell, right? That's essentially what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one angel goes, maybe it could be done different. And now all of a sudden, he is the person or the entity that is the source of all evil. This is how you control opposition. Okay. You label the person who questioned you in the first place as absolute evil, which you can see it in any political spectrum around the world. They do the same fucking thing. It's all cycles of the same thing.
Well, God is the standard for morality. He declares what is right and what is wrong.
You have a ultimate cop-out, okay? I give you guys this. You guys can do this. Any kind of Christian faith can do this. Anytime it comes down, God is the ultimate morality. He is the ultimate.
He is.
You can't argue.
He is.
That is what the problem with your guys' argument. If you're arguing the fact of authority that you are correct because he says he is 100% of the time, you are not going to win, because there's nobody that can go up to you and go, maybe I have a differing opinion. You guys have no concessions to me.
Well,
it's this or nothing.
Well, right.
Although the problem with this is there's thousands of slightly different versions of what you guys are saying, and each and every one of them adamantly believe what it is that they're saying.
There's a lot of difference between people on secondary issues, but there's a lot of people who agree with the basic Christian message of the Bible, the Christian worldview in which God created us on planet Earth and He revealed to us the nature of reality. Like
I'm waiting. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
You can't.
It's cold.
You can't even know the nature of reality if you trust in yourself and what you think. How do you know things? How do you know what you know?
I know.
How?
To think that humans are so ignorant that they can't understand what works around them, that they can't interact with things and learn from it. That's a very clouded and muddied view of who you are as a person. You are much smarter. Okay, much better at doing things than you could ever realize.
Let's go back
I'm better at doing things that I could ever realize.
Can I do this?
I'm trying to talk about epistemology here. So
you don't have to have a being.
I just want to say how people can do that.
This is what it is, and you're going to do what I say.
well, the thing is, how do you know that your consciousness is giving you the correct perception of reality right now?
Oh, okay, hold on. I should have addressed this earlier. That's probably the hiccup we're going on. Okay.
That's
so
fundamental.
God has blamed all bad things, all bad thoughts. This is the devil's fault. Okay, so any of the things coming into our brains about things that we shouldn't do, that according to Christianity are immoral, or other situations like that, that is all Satan's fault. None of that is God, even though He created us. None of that's God's fault. Why? Ask yourself. Why was somebody in the first place questioning God if He was so in the right in the first place? Not to mention the fact, okay, that if you question Him and question what's going on, you don't get explained. You get told you're going to be punished.
Well, I mean, God does reveal to us, He does reveal His word to people. He reveals the Bible to people to tell them how to live. And He gives them opportunity to live.
He didn't reveal it. A bunch of people wrote it down over an X amount of time, and then it came together into a book.
Yeah, and without revelation from the all-knowing God, we who are not all-knowing can't know the nature of reality because we're trusting in our finite consciousness that doesn't have all knowledge.
God knows everything, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay? Past, present, future, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, why didn't He know Satan was going to turn on him when He created him?
He did.
Okay, then therefore He knowingly created all evil.
Yeah. Evil is a part of God's plan. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm done here.
Splitting up the good people from the evil people. So after that,
so He created evil and suffering, and He wanted us to have suffering and evil in the world.
In a
For a God that
sense,
claims to be all good and not be evil, He has created and is in support.
Well, everything He does is good by definition because He is the standard for good. So everything He does is good. You can't judge God by a standard outside of God and say this is how we judge God and whether He's good or not. Like whatever He does is automatically good.
You can judge God based on the common sense of understanding that He created. In the Bible, according to it, He created everything.
Yep.
He then became a dictator and used the normal dictator route of silencing the opposition by threatening anyone who is against him.
Who are you to say it's wrong? What's wrong with that? If God says it's right, then who are you to say it's wrong? If God is the all-powerful being,
millions and potentially trillions of people. I mean,
if God's
the moral standard of being wrong.
If God says that it's right for Him to punish people who rebel against Him, who are you to say it's wrong? That's what God says is right, for Him to enact judgment on people who break His commands. Like a good judge doesn't let bad people off the hook, right?
People say fear God, right?
Right. Fear. Jesus said, don't fear those who can kill the body, but fear the one who can destroy both body and soul in hell. Jesus Christ literally said, fear God, because He can throw you into hell. So that's how God works, you know? And He offers His love to people. He's like, here's my grace and mercy in the form of Jesus Christ coming to die for you.
I can't come, okay.
He sacrificed Himself.
If I'm telling Him, if He goes and does all this stuff, I'm going to love Him forever and take care of Him. But if He doesn't, I'm going to punch Him in the face and stab Him and throw Him in a pit of fire. Like, that doesn't seem like a very good,
well, who are you to judge?
Seem like a very good relationship to you, doesn't it?
God
seems more or less of a vindictive vindictive, cruel, and controlling relationship. And personal interactions between people, those are toxic people that are not good to be around.
Well, no, like God is a judge, right? So if somebody rapes another person, should they be punished for that?
Yes.
Okay, then there's the concept of punishment, and so God punishes people. What's wrong with that? That's what God does. He's a good judge, so he doesn't let people off the hook when they commit evil.
But he
I just have a question about the pencil. I'm really sorry. I'm really
Go, you guys can go for it. I'm done. He's not. He knows where I'm going, and I understand where he's going with it. He's not going to be able to disprove me, but I'm not going to be able to get him to admit.
Well, how do you prove?
Trying to get him to
How do you prove anything, man? How do you prove anything? How do you know anything in your worldview and with your finite consciousness?
Wait, you're on another level, man. I can't.
No, this is important to think about. This is good to talk about.
Dude, I've thought about this stuff for the past like 10 years. I literally, all I do is sit there and ponder on everything. Come on, fresh.
It's good to think about.
I've thought all this very
So why do you read
holes in the Bible left and right?
Well,
Like there's
no, you
so
can't.
many things that don't make any sense at all.
Well, what is your standard for making sense in the first place?
Okay.
How do you know? Like, you need a
If you
standard.
can't understand how fundamental things work together in like a system, then you shouldn't be out here trying to tell everybody else to believe what you believe. If you can't understand how a complex system works that you're believing in, and understand like how things work in general.
So what's your main objection to Christianity in the Bible? What is the reason that you reject
have
it?
a being that claims to be all-knowing, all-powerful, that is supposed to be good, except he is the one that created all of it. He's the one that has been okay with it going everywhere. Anybody who opposed him is going to hell and not actually being explained anything.
And that's
To
just.
me, that sounds like a dictator that is being evil.
And who are you to judge God?
Somebody who is good.
But who are you to say this is wrong when God, who is the standard for good, says that it's right?
Who am I?
Right.
I've never seen God.
You've never seen
I've
God?
never seen God. I've never seen him in my life.
Yeah.
I've never seen him do anything good for me. I've had to do everything for myself. Every single thing in my life, everything that I am right now is because of me.
Well, how do you know that
No
you?
one
How do you
else.
know
I work
that?
my ass off to get where I'm at every second of every day.
Well, how do you know that you exist?
You don't know that you
How do you know that you're making all these truth claims about reality, but how do you know that your consciousness is giving you the correct perception of reality?
Because it doesn't matter.
It does matter. You're making truth claims. How can you say it doesn't matter and yet I'm saying these things that should matter? I'm communicating things.
I'm not saying that this is truth. I'm saying that what you're saying isn't true, and this is how, through logical fallacies.
So how do you know what truth is? How can there be fallacies if there's no truth?
There is truth.
Okay, so how do you prove what's true? How do you prove?
You can look at these things and go, 2 plus 2 equals 4 all day, every day.
Well, how do you know that?
Yeah, I should get
Like, how do you?
And see it. Like right here, I'm doing it for you. 2 plus 2, now there's 4. Like I can do this for you all day, every day, and prove to you every single time, without fail, that this is 4.
Well, you could call it something else. You could call it 5.
Then you'd have to change the meaning of the
when
words.
it's to like we're
But that
Like,
doesn't
it's
matter. Words
we're dealing
are
with
only
language.
this
bones of this
specific
celestial.
placements for specific things or
It was so
ideas.
Well, I mean, how do you know that you exist as a human being, as an entity that's communicating with another entity right now? How do you know that? How do you know that those scientific experiments that we look at?
We could be in a fucking simulation right now. Nobody would know. I don't really care either way.
Well, I mean, if you are, then
My
that
worldview is,
sentence
it might
is.
be, it might not. I'm okay with the option of whatever else it is. I'm okay with that.
So if you're saying we could be this could be an illusion, and I don't know the nature of reality, then like every word you speak is basically meaningless. You can't.
Every word you speak is basically meaningless.
Well, not in my worldview. In your worldview, you have to be consistent with your worldview. In my worldview, I put my faith in what God said about the nature of reality. You're not. You're putting.
This conversation, this specific type of argument style is very unproductive. I understand what you're doing. I study arguing. You can ask her.
Well, you.
I know what you're doing, and I understand how.
Yeah, the argument, the thing while you guys are arguing.
Yeah, the argument in general
not
is
very productive.
Well, it can be. It can be productive.
The reason being is because if I win in this situation, the very next argument, which is going to be about this, I have the upper hand and I can disprove. If he wins,
Well, why don't we just jump straight to that?
That's all.
Well, this is foundational. What we're talking about is epistemology, how you know things, how you know what you know. So you can't you can't state facts about the world when you're trusting in a consciousness that could be deceiving you, right? When you're appealing to you're using circular reasoning by appealing to your consciousness to validate your consciousness, if that's what you're doing.
Story, though, because that's not your conscious deceiving you. That's like outer forces working.
Like the perceptions.
Yeah, but it's a chemical that's not naturally found in your brain being put there by yourself.
Well,
maybe somebody else.
how can you trust the perceptions of that you experience?
Yeah.
How can you trust those in your worldview?
So actually,
In my worldview,
Yes, how can you know what's real and what's not real?
I can
As an
feel it.
agnostic.
I can feel it, right? I can feel the wind on my
That
chest.
could be an illusion.
I can
That's
go and measure it. I can go and measure it.
just because you perceive things doesn't mean they're real.
If it is an illusion, and this is all just some kind of big setup, and it's all just a simulation, the Matrix,
yes.
it doesn't matter if it is actually real or chemical
Well, it does matter.
signals or electronic signals sent to
me-
your
Because
brain.
you're-
It matters your perception of whether or not it is real or fake.
But it does matter because everything that you're saying is meaningless in that worldview because you don't know that you're actually communicating truth to another entity when you're talking with me because you don't know that I actually exist. You don't know that I exist in your worldview. I could just be a like some kind of illusion in your mind.
What he's saying, what he's doing, just so you guys understand, is he's pigeonholing me into saying that everything that I say could just be fake and bullshit because I don't have a higher power leading me.
You're not trusting in the revelation.
I do not need to be a slave to somebody else to have purpose and meaning in my life. To understand that I am real and to understand that where I'm going and I have a path. I do not need that because I'm not a follower.
Well, that statement is completely meaningless. Everything you're saying is completely meaningless. You're using the word I, but how do you know that I exists? What is I composed of?
If you can't that you exist, then you shouldn't be arguing.
Well, the perceptions of your consciousness cannot be labeled I if they could be coming from different entities, right? Maybe it's we.
Okay, hold on. So back to LSD. So it actually doesn't just alter your brain. It inhibits I think it was the thalamus, which is actually what restricts the amount of information coming in. So when you take it, you would look at this, and normally you just...
Yes, I understand how chemically it works, but my point was that it's something that is acting on your brain that isn't there, that you put there.
Yes.
So it's not like your brain is doing it, it's doing it to your brain and making your brain a little...
I'm trying to mediate here is what I'm trying to do. So you're saying, I don't know what your name is.
I'm Matt.
Matt is saying that you don't have a purpose without the purpose of God. However, you're saying that you can assign yourself a purpose.
I'm listening.
Yeah, I'm just trying to double up with you.
We're not talking about purpose necessarily. We're talking about knowing what we know. Like, how does he know what the nature of reality is? And like, how can he communicate sentences? How can he talk and say things and use the word I when he doesn't know what his consciousness is?
Because I can understand what my consciousness is through meditation, through sitting there and thinking about myself, who I am, what I do, what I believe.